He kicked out his pregnant wife from the mansion. 9 months later, he went to sleep and got a surprise. Michael Thompson watched his wife packing her bags while shouting cruel words about her getting pregnant on purpose to take advantage of his fortune. Jennifer, 5 months along, begged for a chance to explain the truth, but he refused to hear a single word. It was when he returned from a business meeting that the argument exploded for good. Michael had discovered Jennifer frequently spoke with his younger brother, Brandon, and his mind, already troubled by suspicions planted by those close to him, interpreted it in the worst possible way. "Do you think I'm stupid, Jennifer?" he yelled, throwing some papers onto the coffee table. "You planned all this from the beginning. The pregnancy, the marriage, everything. Michael, for God's sake, you don't understand anything." Jennifer tried to step closer, but he jerked away. "Don't touch me," he shouted with a coldness she had never seen before. "I want you out of my house today." The rain pounded hard against the windows of the mansion in Beverly Hills, New York, as Jennifer gathered her few personal belongings. Mrs. Martha, the housekeeper who had worked with the family for over 15 years, tried to intervene. "Mr. Thompson, you can't do this to a pregnant woman. She has nowhere to go," said the gray-haired woman, her voice trembling. "You're fired too, Martha. I'm tired of employees meddling where they don't belong," he replied, not even looking at the woman who had cared for the house as if it were her own. On that rainy Tuesday night, Michael literally threw Jennifer's belongings onto the sidewalk. She stood there in simple clothes, a light blue blouse that accentuated her already visible belly, staring at the man she loved as if she no longer recognized him. "One day you'll regret what you're doing," were Jennifer's last words before picking up her bags and disappearing into the darkness of the street. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The following months passed in a blur for Michael. He buried himself in work, expanding his industrial equipment import business, making sure to show the world he was better off without Jennifer. He attended parties, business dinners, always accompanied by different women, as if trying to prove something to himself. But the nights were different. Alone in that enormous mansion, he sometimes heard noises that weren't there, felt presences that didn't exist. The couple's bedroom, now his alone, seemed to have an eerie echo that unsettled him. More than once, he woke in the dead of night with a strange feeling, as if someone were watching him. The business thrived, but Michael grew more bitter by the day. His partners commented on the change in his behavior. Once known for being demanding but fair, he was now just cruel. He fired employees over minor issues, cancelled contracts on a whim, and his reputation in the business world began to tarnish. On a Friday in December, nearly 9 months after kicking Jennifer out, Michael returned from yet another empty night. He had drunk too much at a year-end gathering, trying to forget he was spending the holidays completely alone. He staggered slightly as he climbed the stairs, loosening the navy blue tie he had worn all day. His suit was wrinkled, and he felt a weariness that went far beyond the physical. It was as if he had been carrying an invisible weight on his shoulders for months. He pushed open the bedroom door without turning on the light, as he did every night. He was so used to the routine that he could change in the dark. But when he turned toward the bed, his heart nearly stopped. 3 small figures moved gently on the white duvet. 3 babies, clearly newborns, slept peacefully in different positions. 2 were on their sides with their little legs curled up, and the third was on its back with tiny arms spread wide. Michael blinked several times, thinking it was the alcohol playing tricks on him. He turned on the bedside lamp, and the shock was even greater. There lay 3 identical children, dressed in handmade-looking green cotton outfits. They were clearly triplets, with the same light brown hair and delicate features. Beside them was a white envelope with his name written in handwriting he knew all too well. With trembling hands, he opened the note and read, "They need to know their father. I couldn't take care of them alone anymore. Please don't abandon them like you abandoned me. Jennifer." Michael sat on the edge of the bed, feeling his legs go weak. The baby seemed only a few weeks old, sleeping with a calm that contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside him. One of them stirred and made a soft noise as if dreaming. "My God, "What do I do now?" he whispered to himself, running his hands through his hair. That's when he noticed a small suitcase on the floor with a few baby clothes, diapers, and bottles. Jennifer had left the basics, but clearly she didn't have much to give. The baby's clothes, though clean, were simple, some with nearly invisible patches. The first baby began to whimper, and soon the other two joined in. The sound echoed through the silent room like an alarm Michael didn't know how to turn off. He looked at the bottles, but had no idea how to prepare them or the right temperature. Desperate, he grabbed his phone and dialed Jennifer's number, still saved in his contacts. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried 3 more times with the same result. The number seemed to have been disconnected for weeks. The babies cried louder, and Michael felt panic rising. He'd never held a newborn in his life, and now he had 3 in his care. He tried picking one up, but the child seemed to sense his uncertainty and wailed even harder. That's when he remembered Mrs. Wilson, the elderly neighbor who had lived next door for over 20 years. She had always been kind to Jennifer and had tried to talk to him a few times about what had happened, but Michael had always ignored her. It was 2:30 in the morning, but he had no choice. He picked up one baby, then another, and finally the third, carrying them as carefully as he could to the house next door. The electronic gate was locked, so he rang the bell insistently. A few minutes later, Mrs. Wilson appeared at the second-floor window in her nightgown, her face etched with concern. "Mr. Thompson, good heavens, what's wrong?" she called from above. "Mrs. Wilson, I need help, urgently. There are 3 babies in my house and I don't know what to do," he replied, his voice choked with desperation. The woman hurried downstairs and opened the gate. When she saw the 3 babies in Michael's arms, her expression softened with a mix of tenderness and sadness. "Oh dear Lord, Jennifer's children," she said, taking one of the babies with the ease of someone who had raised 4 of her own. "Come inside, they must be hungry." In Mrs. Wilson's cozy kitchen, furnished with dark wooden antiques, she prepared the bottles with an efficiency that amazed Michael. She explained the right milk temperature, how to hold the babies to avoid choking, and how to change diapers. "Jennifer came to me a few times during her pregnancy," Mrs. Wilson said as she fed one of the triplets. "She was going through a lot, Mr. Thompson, an awful lot." "What kind of troubles?" Michael asked, trying to mimic her movements with another baby. "She was living in a tiny little room in Williamsburg, working at a clothing store during the day and cleaning offices at night. All to earn money for the babies," the woman explained with a subtle tone of reproach. Michael felt a tightness in his chest. All these months while he was living his normal life, Jennifer had been struggling alone to survive and prepare for the arrival of the triplets. "Mrs. Wilson, do you know where she is now?" "I don't, Doctor. It's been about 2 weeks since she last showed up here. She was very thin, very tired. I offered help, but she's too proud, said she'd figure it out on her own. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. When the sun rose, Michael returned home carrying the 3 babies and a bag of supplies Mrs. Wilson insisted on lending him. The reality of the situation was becoming clearer. He was the father of triplets and had no idea how to care for 1 child, let alone 3. The first day was total chaos. The babies cried at different times. The diapers seemed to get dirty every 15 minutes, and Michael couldn't tell the different cries apart. When one finally fell asleep, another woke up. It was an endless cycle that left him exhausted and desperate. Around noon, he called Brandon, Jennifer's brother, who also didn't know where she was. The 23-year-old was shocked to hear about the babies and offered to help, but he lived in Hartford and had to work. "Michael, I always knew my sister wasn't lying about anything. Jennifer isn't the type to lie or deceive," Brandon said over the phone. "You made a huge mistake, man." "I know that now, Brandon, but I need to find her. These babies need their mother. I'll make some calls, see if anyone knows anything." But she was in a really tough spot these past few months. She got a job at a garment factory, but it was too much for a pregnant woman. Michael hung up feeling even worse. Imagining Jennifer working in a factory while pregnant with triplets made him question every decision he'd made in the past few months. On the third day, one of the babies, the one Michael had mentally nicknamed Little Warrior for crying the loudest, developed a fever. The other two also seemed quieter than usual, sending Michael into a full panic. He rushed to the nearest hospital with all three babies in the car, driving desperately through the streets of New York. In the pediatric emergency room at Mercy General Hospital in Beverly Hills, an experienced nurse named Debbie attended to them. "They're a bit dehydrated and show mild signs of malnutrition," explained Dr. Sarah Matthews, the pediatrician who examined them. "This suggests the mother wasn't getting proper nutrition during the pregnancy. The babies were born slightly underweight." "Malnutrition," Michael repeated, feeling the world spin around him. "It's nothing serious right now, but we'll need to keep an eye on it. I'll prescribe some vitamins and special formula. Where's the mother? She needs follow-up care too." Michael couldn't answer. How could he explain that he'd kicked his pregnant wife out of the house and now had no idea where she was? Nurse Debbie, a 50-year-old woman with a motherly gaze, noticed his discomfort. "I recognize these babies," she said softly, stepping closer. "Their mother gave birth here 3 weeks ago. It was a complicated delivery because she arrived alone and in advanced labor." "Alone?" Michael's legs nearly gave out. She had no one with her. A very young woman, far too thin to be carrying triplets. She was only hospitalized for 1 day because she couldn't afford to stay longer. She left against medical advice. Michael had to sit down. The image of Jennifer giving birth alone, with no one to support her, was more than he could process. "She left a fake address on the form," the nurse continued, "but I overheard her talking on the phone with someone about working at a garment factory on the East Side. Leaving the hospital with a list of medical instructions and a guilt that seemed to double by the hour, Michael decided he needed to find Jennifer. Not just for the babies, but because he was beginning to understand the magnitude of what he'd done. That afternoon, he called his assistant, Jessica, and asked her to cancel all his appointments for the week. For the first time in his career, something was more important than business. "Mr. Thompson, is everything all right? You never cancel important meetings," Jessica asked, concerned. "Jessica, I need to find someone. I want you to research all the garment factories on the east side of New York. Look for an employee named Jennifer Thompson." "She's your ex-wife, isn't she? May I ask why?" "It's complicated, Jessica, very complicated." During the search, Michael tried to maintain a routine with the triplets. Mrs. Wilson came to help a few hours a day, teaching him the basics of baby care. She was patient, but he could see in her eyes a mix of pity and disapproval. "Mr. Thompson, can I say something?" she asked on Thursday while bathing one of the babies. "Of course, Mrs. Wilson." "I saw Jennifer several times selling sweets outside the supermarket during her pregnancy. She was trying to save money for the baby's things. Once, it was raining, and she stayed there, soaked, because she needed to sell enough to eat." Every word felt like a knife to Michael's chest. He had imagined Jennifer enjoying life, maybe even with another man, when in reality she was struggling to survive. "Why didn't you tell me this before? You didn't want to hear anything about her, remember? You always changed the subject when I tried to bring her up." It was true. Michael had built a bubble around himself, refusing to listen to anything that might shake his beliefs about Jennifer. On Friday, Jessica called with information. "Mr. Thompson, I found a Jennifer Thompson working at Johnson Garment Factory in Queens. But according to their HR, she hasn't shown up for work in 4 days. They're worried because she never missed a day before." Michael's heart raced. 4 days was exactly when the babies had appeared at his house. "Can you give me the address she listed with the company?" "I already have it. It's a boarding house on Maple Street, number 347. Without wasting time, Michael left the babies with Mrs. Wilson and headed to the east side. The address was in a neighborhood he'd never set foot in, with modest houses and unpaved stretches of road. The boarding house was an old 2-story building, painted in faded green with small rooms divided inside. A woman around 60 with dyed blonde hair and a floral apron answered the door. "Good afternoon, I'm looking for Jennifer Thompson. Does she live here?" "Jennifer? Oh, poor thing. She hasn't been back in 4 days. She left all her belongings in her room but never returned. I'm worried. Can I see her room?" The woman who introduced herself as Mrs. Johnson led him to a tiny room at the back of the house. It had no window, just a small vent. A single bed, a two-door wardrobe, and a small table were the only furniture. On the table were printed photos of the triplets on plain paper, some notes with baby expense calculations, and a small notebook where Jennifer had written down the schedules of her 3 different jobs. She worked so hard, that girl. Left early in the morning and only came back late at night. Always polite, never caused any trouble. When I found out she was pregnant, I offered her a discount on the rent, but she didn't want to accept it, said Mrs. Johnson. Daniel flipped through the little notebook and was shocked. Jennifer worked at the factory in the morning, cleaned offices in the afternoon, and did some sewing jobs at night. She would work up to 14 hours a day, even while pregnant. Mrs. Johnson, do you have any idea where she might be? Well, these past few days she seemed very worried. She said the rent would be late because she needed to save money for the babies. Mentioned she might have to look for an even cheaper place. The guilt Daniel felt turned into desperation. The more he learned about Jennifer's life these past months, the more he realized the enormity of his mistake. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Back at the mansion, Daniel found Mrs. Wilson worried. One of the triplets had cried a lot that afternoon and seemed quieter than usual. I think we should take him to the doctor again, Mr. Thompson. This little one isn't nursing well. At Mercy General Hospital, Dr. Sarah examined the 3 babies again, and her expression turned serious. One of them will need a small blood transfusion. It's nothing critical, but the blood type is AB negative, which is rarer. We'll check the blood bank, but it would be ideal to have a direct relative as a donor. Can I donate? Daniel asked immediately. After the tests, they found out Daniel had O-positive blood, which was incompatible. The only option was the baby's mother or another relative with a matching blood type. Mr. Thompson, we'll search the blood bank, but it might take a few hours. The baby is stable, but the sooner we get the blood, the better. Daniel left the hospital a desperate man. He called Jessica and asked her to hire private investigators to find Jennifer. He called every hospital in the area asking if any young woman had been admitted. He even called the Salvation Army. It was Brandon who gave the first real lead. He had spoken to an old college friend of Jennifer's who worked at a cleaning company. Daniel, I found a clue. Stephanie said Jennifer was taking extra shifts at a factory on the south side. Heavy night shifts to save more money. I'll text you the address. It was almost midnight when Daniel arrived at Wilson Metalworks in the Rust Belt area. The security guard, a middle-aged man named George, confirmed he knew Jennifer. The young woman who was pregnant, she used to work here overnight, cleaning the offices, but she hasn't shown up in a few days. Last few times I saw her, she could barely stand. Do you know where she might be? Well, she mentioned once that after the babies were born, she'd try for a job with a family. Said it paid better and she could take care of the kids at the same time. But I don't know any details. Daniel returned to the hospital with a heavy heart. The baby's condition had stabilized temporarily, but the doctors were clear they needed compatible blood soon. He spent the night at the hospital, pacing the halls and calling every contact he could remember. That's when he ran into Nurse Debbie, who was on the night shift. How are the babies? She asked, sitting beside him on the hallway bench. One of them needs a transfusion, and I can't find their mother. It's all my fault, Daniel broke down. Can I say something? I've worked here 20 years and seen a lot of tough situations. Your wife, ex-wife, she seemed like a very special woman. What do you mean? On the day she gave birth, even though she was in terrible pain, she kept repeating that the babies had to be okay because their father would love them dearly. She said his name with such tenderness that it didn't match someone who was trying to deceive him. Michael leaned his head against the wall, feeling tears that hadn't come in years. I ruined everything, Nurse Debbie. I destroyed an innocent person's life out of pure pride and distrust. It's never too late to make things right, as long as the person is alive and willing to forgive. It was 5 in the morning when Michael's phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello? Michael? The weak voice on the other end was unmistakable. Jennifer, where are you? The babies are in the hospital and one of them needs... I know. I'm at Mount Sinai Hospital. I fainted at work yesterday and just now managed to borrow a phone. Michael ran through the hospital corridors like he'd never run in his life. He found Jennifer on a gurney in the emergency room, visibly thinner and with a pale face. She was wearing a white work blouse and faded jeans. When their eyes met, there was a tense silence. Jennifer looked away as if she couldn't face the reality of their reunion. "How are they?" was the first thing she asked. "One needs a transfusion, can you—" Of course, she tried to get up from the gurney but was shaking from weakness. The doctor attending to her, Dr. Daniel, intervened. "You can't donate blood in this condition. You have severe anemia and signs of physical exhaustion. You need to recover first." "But my son," Jennifer tried to insist. "Here's what we'll do," said Dr. Daniel. "I'll give you an IV and some vitamins. In 2 hours, we should be able to stabilize you enough for the donation." During those 2 hours, Michael and Jennifer sat in the same room in an awkward silence. She stared at her hands. He looked out the window. The weight of the past months hung in the air like a thick cloud. "Why did you leave them at my house?" Michael finally asked. "Because they deserve a better life than I can give them," Jennifer answered without looking at him. "You have the means to care for them." "And what about you? Didn't you think of yourself?" "It's been a long time since I've thought of anything but them." The simplicity of her answer hit Michael like a punch to the gut. While he had spent months hating and blaming Jennifer, she had dedicated every minute of her life to the well-being of children who hadn't even been born yet. "Jennifer, he began, but she cut him off. "You don't have to say anything, Michael, I understand. You never wanted this responsibility, and now you're stuck with it. I'll make the donation and then leave. You'll all be fine." "That's not it. I was wrong, Jennifer. Completely wrong about everything. It's too late for regrets now." When Jennifer was finally able to donate, she insisted on going straight to the pediatric ICU to see the babies. Michael went with her, watching as her eyes filled with tears at the sight of the 3 tiny beings hooked up to machines. "They've grown so much in just 4 days," she whispered, gently touching each little face through the glass. "Jennifer, they won't stop crying when I'm not around. It's like they sense something's missing. They miss their mother, it's natural. Not just their mother, they miss having a whole family." Jennifer turned to him with a pained expression. "Michael, don't do this. Don't give me hope you'll just take away again. I can't take it anymore. What if I said I don't want to take it away? What if I said I've spent these months realizing I made the biggest mistake of my life? I'd say it's too late. I'm not the same person you threw out of your house. These months have changed me." She was right. The Jennifer standing before him had a hardness in her eyes that wasn't there before. The hair, once always well-groomed, was now cut in a simple and practical style. The hands bore calluses from hard labor. "You're right," Michael admitted. "You're not the same anymore. You're much stronger than I imagined, stronger than me." Strength is something you develop when you have no choice. The transfusion was successful, and the next day the 3 babies were discharged from the hospital. Jennifer insisted on leaving alone, but Michael realized she had nowhere to go. "Where are you going?" "I have some work contacts as a nanny, I'll manage." "Jennifer, they're your children too. You can't just disappear." "And what do you suggest? That I go back to your house as if nothing happened?" "I suggest we try to figure out how 2 people who hurt each other deeply can raise 3 children together." Jennifer fell silent for a long time, looking at the babies sleeping peacefully in the back seat of Michael's car. "I don't trust you anymore, Michael, and don't blame me for that." "I don't blame you. But are you willing to try for our children?" "Our children?" she repeated bitterly. "Where were you when I spent sleepless nights worrying about how I'd raise them alone?" "Being a fool. The biggest fool in the world." After much tense discussion, they reached a temporary agreement. Jennifer would stay in the maid's house, a small apartment in the back of the mansion that Mrs. Martha had used before being let go. It was a way to be close to the babies without having to live directly with Michael. The first week was extremely difficult. Jennifer cared for the triplets during the day, and Michael took over at night. They barely spoke, communicating through notes about feeding times and diaper changes. But the babies seemed to sense the tension. They cried more when their parents were in the same room, as if picking up on the negative energy between them. It was Mrs. Wilson who gave the first important piece of advice. You two need to stop acting like enemies. These children feel everything that's happening. It's not that simple, Mrs. Wilson, Michael replied. Of course it's not simple. Hurting is easy. Fixing is hard. But if you don't try, the ones who will pay the price are these innocent children. That night, Michael knocked on Jennifer's apartment door. She opened it warily, still in her robe after bathing the babies. We need to talk, he said. About what? About everything I've learned these past few days. About how you fought alone, about how unfair I was. Jennifer let him in, but kept her distance. The apartment was small but cozy, and she had managed to organize it functionally for the babies. Michael, I don't want a conversation just so you can ease your conscience, if that's what this is. It's not. It's because I need you to know I was completely wrong about your reasons for marrying me. What reasons? I thought you got pregnant on purpose to take advantage of my money. I thought our marriage was a sham to you. Jennifer sat on the small couch, her expression weary. And now you've discovered it wasn't like that. I've discovered a lot of things. I found out you worked 14-hour days just to survive, that you gave birth alone, that you sold sweets in the rain to buy things for the babies. And does that change anything? It changes everything, Jennifer. It means I destroyed an innocent person's life out of pure pride. Michael, the issue isn't whether I was innocent or not. The issue is that you chose to believe the ugliest version of me instead of trusting the person you chose to marry. She was right, and he knew it. The deepest wound wasn't just kicking her out. It was the complete lack of trust he had shown. Is there any way to fix this? I don't know. Honestly, I don't. That night, Michael lay awake thinking about Jennifer's response. She hadn't said there was no way to fix things, only that she didn't know how. It was the first small opening in days. The next morning, he made a decision. He called Jessica and asked her to research everything about registering a business in Jennifer's name. If she didn't trust him romantically, at least she could have financial independence. Mr. Thompson, may I ask what kind of business? Something related to what she knows how to do. She's good at management and has experience with customer service. Maybe a small event planning company or something like that. Meanwhile, he watched Jennifer taking care of the triplets. She had developed an efficient routine, knew exactly what each baby needed just by their cry, and could get them to sleep with an ease he envied. But he also noticed she avoided any casual physical contact with him. If he got too close, she moved away. If their hands touched while picking up a baby, she pulled hers back immediately. Jennifer, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Do I disgust you? The question caught her off guard and she stopped what she was doing. Disgust? Why would you ask that? Because you won't even touch me by accident. It's like I'm contagious. Jennifer stayed silent for a while, folding the baby's clothes. It's not disgust, Michael, it's self-preservation. What do you mean? During the pregnancy, I spent whole nights remembering your touch, your voice, the way you laughed at my bad jokes. Those were the only things that gave me strength to keep going. Michael felt his heart tighten. And now I know that if I let myself feel those things again, I'll only hurt even more when you change your mind again. What if I don't change my mind? Everyone changes their mind, Michael, especially about people like me. People like you, people who have nothing to offer but love, people who have to work hard just to survive, people who don't belong in your world. It was the first time Jennifer had put her real feelings into words, and Michael realized the wound ran much deeper than he'd imagined. It wasn't just about being kicked out of the house, it was about feeling inadequate from the very start of their relationship. Jennifer, you know I fell in love with you long before I knew anything about money or social status, right? I know. But when things got serious, that started to matter. It shouldn't have mattered, but it did, and it will again. That night, Michael made another decision. He called his lawyer and asked him to prepare a document transferring half of his assets to Jennifer, whether they reconciled their marriage or not. Mr. Thompson, are you sure about this? It's a considerable amount. I'm sure. She's the mother of my children and deserves financial security. no matter what happens between us. What if she refuses? Then I'll have to get more creative. The creativity came in the form of a discovery that would change everything. While organizing some old papers, Michael found a folder with Jennifer's medical records that she'd forgotten when they lived together. One of the tests, dated 2 months before their wedding, confirmed the pregnancy. But there was more. It was a multiple pregnancy. And by the development, the babies had been conceived even before she agreed to marry him. Jennifer hadn't gotten pregnant to trap him into marriage. She was already pregnant when she said yes, and she'd hidden it from him. With the test in hand, Michael went looking for Jennifer in the apartment. It was late afternoon, and she was nursing one of the triplets while the other two slept. "Jennifer, I need to show you something." "What is it?" "A test you forgot here." He held out the paper. Jennifer turned pale when she saw the document. "Where did you find this?" "In the middle of my papers." "Why did you never tell me you were already pregnant when we got married?" "Because you would think exactly what you ended up thinking anyway, that I was trying to deceive you." "But if you were already pregnant before agreeing to marry me, that proves you didn't plan any of this." "Michael, when you're in love with someone who has a lot more money than you, anything you do can seem self-serving." "I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that you'd find out and think I was using the pregnancy to secure the marriage. So I chose to hide it and tell you later, when our relationship was stronger." "And why didn't you tell me when the suspicions started?" "Because by then anything I said would have sounded like a flimsy excuse." Michael sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Jennifer, this test proves you were honest from the start. It proves I was wrong about everything. It proves you were wrong about the facts, but it doesn't change the truth about trust." "What truth?" "That you chose to believe I was capable of manipulating you, instead of believing I truly loved you." It was the second time she mentioned love in the past, and Michael noticed. "You loved me?" "Of course I loved you. Do you think I'd marry someone for money? What kind of person do you think I am?" "I don't know what kind of person you are." "I thought I did, but I was wrong. And now I'm trying to figure out who you really are." "I'm someone who loves deeply and works hard to take care of those I love. I've always been that way. The problem is, you never really knew me." "Then help me know you now." Jennifer looked at him with an unreadable expression. "Why does this matter to you now?" "Because I realized I was in love with the right person, but completely misjudged her. And because that person raised 3 of our children practically alone while I was being a proud fool." "And you think that's enough? That now that you know the truth, everything goes back to normal?" "No, I don't. I think we need to start over, like 2 people trying to raise kids together and figure out if they can trust each other again." Jennifer stayed silent for a long time, rocking the baby who had just finished feeding. "Michael, I'll be very clear with you. I still feel something for you, yes. But I'm also very afraid. And as long as the fear is stronger than anything else, it won't work." "What would make the fear smaller?" "Time. A lot of time. And certainty that you've really changed, not just realized you were wrong." "What's the difference?" "The difference is realizing you were wrong is about the past. Changing is about not making the same mistakes in the future." That night, Michael thought deeply about Jennifer's words. She was right. Knowing the truth about the past didn't guarantee he'd be different in the future. Over the next weeks, he focused on showing change through small but consistent actions. He woke up early to care for the babies without her asking. He made breakfast and left it at her apartment door. He hired a daytime nanny so she could rest. Most importantly, he stopped pushing conversations about their relationship. He focused on being a good father and co-parent, without pressing for more. The change didn't go unnoticed. Jennifer began to relax around him, even smiling sometimes when he fumbled with the babies. "You're getting better," she remarked one day, watching him clumsily change a diaper. "I still have a lot to learn." We all do. Small moments like these began building a new foundation between them. It wasn't romance, it wasn't passion, but it was mutual respect and teamwork. 2 weeks later, Michael received an unexpected call from Jennifer's brother. "Michael, I need to tell you something." It's about what happened between you two. What about it? My brother-in-law, Daniel. He came to me this week. He was weighed down by guilt over something he did. Daniel was Michael's brother, 2 years younger, and he'd always had a complicated relationship with the fact that Michael had inherited the family business. What did he do? He confessed that he was the one who planted suspicions in your head about Jennifer, said he made up stories about her only being interested in your money. Michael felt the world spin around him. What do you mean, made up? He'd been in love with Jennifer since you two started dating. He thought if he could break you up, he'd have a chance with her, so he started poisoning your mind about her intentions. What kind of poison? He claimed he saw her talking to other men, that she asked about your business, that she commented on the financial gap between you. All lies. Michael had to sit down. All the doubts he'd developed about Jennifer had stemmed from his own brother's manipulations. Why is he confessing this now? Because he found out about the triplets and feels remorse, said he never imagined things would get to the point where you'd kick her out while she was pregnant. When Michael hung up, he felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger at being manipulated so easily, and relief at having more proof that Jennifer had always been innocent. But when he told Jennifer about the discovery, her reaction surprised him. "I already knew," she said simply. "What do you mean, you already knew?" "I always knew someone was bad-mouthing me to you. It was obvious from how your suspicions had no real basis. I just didn't know who it was." "And why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because if I had to keep defending myself against invisible accusations, our relationship wouldn't have had a future anyway. If you didn't trust me enough to question those doubts, the problem ran deeper." Once again, Jennifer showed an emotional maturity that left Michael amazed. "So, this doesn't change anything for you. It changes that now you know you were manipulated, but it doesn't change that you let yourself be manipulated. The next time someone plants doubts about me, what's to stop you from believing them again? The difference is now I know you better. Michael, you lived with me for a year before we got married. If in that time you didn't know me well enough to be sure of my character, what's changed now?" It was a hard question to answer, and Michael knew she had a point. "What's changed is that now I've seen you fighting alone for our children. I've seen the sacrifices you've made. I've seen how strong and determined you are. Those are things I hadn't seen before. Or maybe you just weren't paying attention before. Maybe you're right. Michael, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to understand if you've really changed, or if you're just impressed with me for a few weeks. How can I prove I've changed? Time and consistency, and facing the next crisis together, instead of assuming I'm the one to blame. As if the universe wanted to test that statement, the first crisis came just days later. Michael came home to find Jennifer crying in the apartment, with all 3 babies wailing too. It was total chaos. "What happened?" he asked, walking in without knocking. "They all have colic at the same time. They haven't stopped crying for 2 hours. I'm exhausted, and I don't know what to do anymore," she answered through tears. The old Michael would have assumed she wasn't taking proper care of the babies, or that she was exaggerating the situation. The new Michael simply asked, "What can I do to help?" They stayed up all night, taking turns with the 3 babies, massaging their little bellies, trying different positions to soothe them. There were no accusations, no blame, just teamwork. At 5 in the morning, when the babies finally settled, Jennifer looked at Michael with a different expression. "Thank you," she said simply. "For what?" "For not assuming it was my fault, for helping without question, for staying up all night without complaining. That's what parents do, right? That's what partners do." It was the first time in weeks she'd used the word partners to refer to them, and Michael felt it was a small step forward. In the days that followed, little moments like this added up. Michael consistently showed he'd changed his way of handling crises and challenges. Instead of looking for someone to blame, he looked for solutions. One day, while playing with the babies in the mansion's living room, Jennifer made an observation. "They're starting to develop different personalities." "How so?" "This one," she pointed to one of the triplets, "is calmer, observes everything before reacting. This other one is impatient, wants everything right away. And this third one is more affectionate, always wants to be held. Michael watched the children carefully and realized she was right. Each had their own quirks, even though they were so small. How do you notice these things? When you spend time really paying attention to people, you learn a lot about them. She wasn't just talking about the babies, and Michael understood the message. Jennifer, can I ask you a personal question? Go ahead. What did you dream for your life before you met me? The question caught her off guard, but she thought before answering. I wanted a family. I wanted work that made me feel useful. I wanted to travel a little, see new places. I wanted a small but cozy home with a garden to plant a few things. Simple dreams. To me, they weren't simple. They were everything. And now? What do you dream of now? Now I dream of raising these 3 boys to be good men. Men who treat women with respect, who are honest, who work hard for what they want. Men better than... She stopped. Better than me. Better than you were. It was the first time she'd spoken about him in past versus present terms, as if acknowledging there was a difference. Do you think I can be part of that dream? I don't know yet, but I'm starting to hope maybe you can. Hope. It was the first positive word Jennifer had used about their future. That night, Michael made another important decision. He called Daniel and arranged to meet. They met at a cafe in downtown New York. Daniel, visibly uncomfortable, could barely look his brother in the eye. So what Brandon told me is true. Michael got straight to the point. It's true. I ruined everything. Why, Daniel? Why did you do it? Because I was in love with her and jealous. Because you always had everything, and I couldn't stand seeing you happy too. Do you have any idea what you've done? You destroyed a family. You almost destroyed an innocent person's life. I know. I know, and I'm filled with remorse. Remorse won't fix what you did. What do you want from me, Michael? I want you to tell Jennifer in person what you did. I want her to hear from your own lips that all the suspicions planted in my head were lies. And then? Then you'll stay out of our lives and never come back. Daniel agreed, and the next day he went to the mansion. Jennifer greeted him politely, but her discomfort was clear. Jennifer, I came here to confess something, Daniel began. I was the one who told Michael you were only interested in his money. Jennifer didn't show surprise, just listened in silence. I made up stories about you talking to other men, asking questions about his business being a gold digger. All lies. Why, was Jennifer's only question. Because I was in love with you and wanted to break you two apart. And you didn't think about the consequences. I thought at worst you'd fight and split up. I never imagined it would get to the point where he'd throw you out of the house while you were pregnant. Jennifer stayed silent for a long time, just staring at Daniel. Daniel, do you have any idea what I've been through these past few months? I imagine it must have been hard. Hard? She repeated, her voice a mix of disbelief and pain. I spent nights sleeping on the street because I couldn't afford rent. I worked until I couldn't stand anymore. I gave birth alone because there was no one to be with me. Daniel hung his head, visibly ashamed. But do you know what was worse than all of that? Jennifer continued. Finding out the man I loved chose to believe lies about me instead of trusting the person he'd married. Jennifer, I'm so sorry, truly. Your regret won't give me back the months I lost. It won't erase the nights I cried in despair. It won't change the fact that my children almost grew up without a father because of your manipulation. What can I do to make it right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. The damage is already done. Daniel left the mansion visibly shaken, and Jennifer stayed alone in the living room for a few minutes before Michael appeared. How are you? He asked. Relieved. Relieved? To finally hear confirmation of what I always knew, and to see you've really cut ties with the person who manipulated you. Does this change anything between us? It changes that now I know you're willing to stand up to your own family to protect ours. Our family. She had said, our family. Jennifer, can I tell you something? Go ahead. These last 2 months taking care of our children with you, they've been the best of my life. Why? Because for the first time, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. like I had a real purpose. And before you didn't? Before I only cared about making money, impressing people, being successful. But success means nothing without family to share it with. Michael, can I ask you something now? Of course. If I hadn't gotten pregnant, would you still have thrown me out at the first real conflict? The question was painful, but Michael knew he had to be honest. Probably. I was too proud and distrustful. And now? Now I've learned that pride is a luxury no one with a family can afford. What do you mean? Family means trusting, even when you have doubts. It means standing by each other, even when you're angry. It means choosing us over me. Jennifer smiled for the first time in weeks, small but genuine. You're starting to understand. I'm trying to learn. Michael, I'll tell you the truth. I still love you. Michael's heart raced at those words. But, she continued, I'm also still very afraid of you. And as long as the fear is bigger than the love, we can't truly be together. What would make the fear smaller? Seeing you face a real crisis by my side instead of blaming me for it. As if being tested again, the crisis came the following week. One of the triplets developed a severe food allergy and had to be rushed to Mercy General Hospital. While waiting for test results, Jennifer was visibly nervous. What if it's serious? What if I did something wrong with his food? She blamed herself. The old Michael would have agreed with these doubts and maybe even used the situation to question her care. The new Michael responded differently. Jennifer, you're the best mother these children could have. If something happened, we'll figure it out together and solve it together. No blame. She looked at him in surprise. You've really changed. I'm trying to be the man you and our kids deserve. The baby fully recovered in 2 days, but how Michael handled the crisis marked a turning point in their relationship. That night, when they got home, Jennifer made a decision. Michael, I want to try. Try what? Try us again, slowly, carefully, but I want to try. Are you sure? I'm sure I want to try. I'm not sure it'll work, but I want to try. That's how the second phase of their relationship began. It wasn't a romantic fresh start, but a practical one. Jennifer moved back into the main house, but into a separate room. They took care of the kids together during the day and talked long into the nights. Michael discovered things about Jennifer he'd never noticed before. How she'd always wanted to study education, but never had the chance. How she dreamed of opening a small school for underprivileged children. How she knew how to play guitar, but was too shy to play in front of others. Why did you never tell me these things before? He asked one night. Because you never really asked. You'd say, how was your day, but didn't listen to the answer. It was true. Michael realized that during their first marriage, he'd treated Jennifer more like pleasant company than a whole person with her own dreams and ambitions. And now, what do you want to do about your dreams? I don't know if they're still the same dreams. Now I have 3 kids to raise. What if you could do both? Raise our kids and pursue your dreams? How? We could think about it together. Maybe start with private tutoring here at home, or a small early education project. You have practical experience now with triplets. For the first time, Jennifer talked about the future with real excitement. They spent hours discussing possibilities, planning how she could start small and grow. Michael, can I ask you something? Always. Why is this important to you? My dreams? Because I've found that when you're happy, everyone around you is happier too. And because I want our kids to see parents who are fulfilled, not just surviving. 3 months after Jennifer's return, they'd established a routine that worked. The triplets were growing up healthy. Jennifer had started giving some tutoring lessons to neighborhood kids, and Michael had learned to balance work and family. But they still slept in separate rooms. There was still physical distance between them, despite all the emotional closeness they'd built. Jennifer, can I ask you a delicate question? Go ahead. Do you still feel attracted to me? She blushed slightly before answering. I do, but... But physical attraction without complete emotional trust is dangerous for me. What would give you complete emotional trust? Time. and a few more crises faced together. And knowing you won't run at the first real difficulty. The next real difficulty came 2 months later, in a way neither expected. Michael discovered his company was being investigated for tax evasion, something that had happened before he fully took over the business, but could result in heavy fines or even legal trouble. When he told Jennifer about the situation, she immediately realized this was the ultimate test of how he'd react under real pressure. "What does this mean for us?" she asked. "It might mean we'll have to sell some things, maybe the mansion, maybe live more simply for a few years." "And how do you feel about that?" "Scared, but not of becoming poor. Scared that you might think you're going back to the hard life you had before." "Michael, look at me." He met her gaze, and she cupped his face with both hands. "I was born into hardship. I know how to live with little. What I don't know is how to live without trust, without partnership, without real love. If you're willing to face this with me side by side, then we can face anything. Even if we lose everything. We won't lose everything. We have 3 beautiful children. We have each other, and we have our health. The rest is disposable." That night, for the first time in nearly a year, they kissed. It wasn't a kiss of desperate passion, but one of understanding, of true partnership. "Jennifer, I want to try something." "What?" "I want us to get married again. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Because now we know who we are and choose to be together anyway. A real marriage this time. A marriage where I promise to truly know you, truly support you, and truly trust you, no matter what happens. And if I promise the same, then we'll be a real family." The wedding happened 6 months later, in the living room of their own mansion, with the triplets in their arms and only Mrs. Wilson and Brandon as witnesses. There was no big party, no extravagance. Just 2 people who had learned what it truly meant to commit to each other. The company investigation ended with a heavy fine, but no criminal charges. They had to sell some assets and live more modestly, but they discovered they were happier that way. Jennifer opened a tiny early childhood school in their backyard. Michael learned to cook so he could help with family meals. The triplets grew up surrounded by love, stability, and the example of parents who face problems together. 2 years later, on a Sunday afternoon, as they watched the kids play in the garden, Jennifer made an observation. "You know what I find funny?" "What?" "If you hadn't kicked me out, we'd never have discovered who we really were." "How so?" "We were living a fantasy. You, the successful businessman, me, the perfect wife. But we weren't real to each other. And now we are. Now I truly know you. I know how you react when you're scared, how you handle pressure, how you treat people when you're vulnerable. And you truly know me too. And do you like what you know?" "I love what I know. Even knowing all my flaws? Especially knowing all your flaws, because I know you're willing to work on them." That night, after putting the triplets to bed, they sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. "Michael, can I tell you a secret?" "Always." "The day you kicked me out, I wasn't just sad, I was relieved." "Relieved?" "Relieved I didn't have to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. Relieved I could stop trying to be the person you wanted me to be." "And who did you want to be?" "Exactly who I am today. A mother, an educator, a true partner. Someone who faces problems instead of running from them." "Jennifer, do you forgive me for wasting so much time?" "I forgive you for everything. But mostly, I forgive myself for taking so long to show who I really was." "And now?" "Now we have a whole lifetime to keep getting to know each other for real." The triplets grew up hearing the story of how their parents separated and found their way back. Not a romanticized version, but the truth about how 2 people can lose each other and find their way back when they learn to see beyond their own insecurities. Jennifer built her school into the leading early childhood education center in the area. Michael discovered he preferred working on smaller, more personal projects rather than with big corporations. And every time they faced a crisis, because crises are inevitable in life, they remembered the promise they'd made to each other, to face everything together side by side without blame or running away. The mansion was eventually sold, and they moved into a smaller but cozier home. The triplets had a big yard to play in. Jennifer had space to expand her school, And Michael realized happiness had nothing to do with the size of a house. Years later, when the boys were teenagers, one of them asked, "Dad, do you regret kicking Mom out of the house back then?" Michael thought for a moment before answering, "I regret the pain I caused, but I don't regret what we learned. Sometimes you have to get completely lost to discover who you really are. And what if you hadn't found your way back to each other? Then I would have spent my whole life knowing I wasted the chance to be truly happy." Jennifer, listening from the kitchen, smiled to herself. She'd learned that true love isn't about never having problems. It's about choosing to face them together, even when giving up would have been easier. On the night of their 10th anniversary of their second marriage, Michael gave Jennifer a simple gift, a guitar. "So you can play all the songs you've always wanted to," he explained, "even though you know I'm terrible at it. Especially because you're terrible at it. Because I want to be here for every attempt, every mistake, and every little victory." That night, she played her first song for him. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of love and a freedom she'd never felt before. And that's how two people who loved each other but didn't truly know each other learned that real love isn't about idealizing someone. It's about accepting and supporting the real person behind those ideals. The triplets, now young adults, always say they have the best parents in the world. Not because they're perfect, but because they never pretend to be. Because they show that true love is daily work, a conscious choice, and the courage to be vulnerable. And every time they tell their story, it ends the same way, with the certainty that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave a sincere comment below. Do you think Michael deserved a second chance? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartfelt stories.